Get a custodial sentence, but for a first offence, unlikely.
I've never been in trouble with the police before, you see.
Okay. Have you got a solicitor?
Yeah.
Have you asked the solicitor what's likely to happen?
He said I could get probation.
Well, I agree with him. Okay.
So, do you want to put me in jail, will they?
It's very unlikely. I mean, I cannot say to you, no, they will not, because I'd be fibbing. They might, but it's very, very unlikely.
Because you know when I go on Tuesday, will it get postponed, or...
Will you get what?
Will it get, you know when you go Tuesday to court, will they tell you to come back again?
No, it won't be postponed. They'll probably hear it then.
Then, yeah.
More than likely, yes.
Because according to my solicitor, he said it'll get postponed.
Well, if your solicitor tells you it'll get postponed, he obviously has more detailed information of the case, and I don't see any reason to disagree with him. So if he says it'll get postponed, then the chances are it will.
Yeah, because I got a letter off, a church I used to go to, you see. Would that help as well?
You mean a character reference?
Yeah.
It may help. Certainly won't do any harm, will it?
No.
Okay.
Alright, thanks.
How do? Whoever you are, you look like Stuart.
How do, Alan? I'd like to speak to you about two topics tonight. One about, John Stalker, the former deputy chief constable of Manchester. And the second about the pay rise of the MPs. First, John Stalker.
Which do you think is the most important? Because you're only going to get one of them.
John Stalker.
Right, do that one then.
Right, when he resigned...
Yes.
There was an interview on BBC's Panorama called Stalker, right? That was on 16th of June, right? And David Taylor, a journalist, did an interview on him. And he was there backing him up and everything.
What do you mean backing him up?
Well, agreeing with him and...
David Taylor was?
Yeah.
Go on.
Anyway, this didn't go down too well with, some of the higher-up people in the government. And David Taylor was asked to do another programme on it. And he did so, and this time he went against John Stalker. Calling him and everything. Anyway, John Stalker started to write a book, but this David Taylor, gathering all the information off John Stalker, has wrote a book before him, and I was wondering, could John Stalker sue like David Taylor?
For what?
Well, using all the information, is it not?
Well, the information I don't know what information is in David Taylor's book, but the information is in the public domain, I would suggest.
Anyway, Alan, quickly, what does a Blackpool donkey have?
I told you only get the one. How do, Shirley?
Hello, Alan. I've been watching TV this evening, The Life of a She-Devil.
Oh, brilliant. Is it on again?
Yeah, again, already. It's brought to mind something that makes me extremely angry. The she-devil herself, her husband has run off.
Yeah, I remember the story. Yeah.
In an ivory tower. And she's been treated extremely badly by her husband, the she-devil. Right. And she's gone along...
The other woman is played by Judith Hodge, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Is it? No, Patricia Hodge.
Patricia, yeah.
He said, throwing names into the hat, I once had dinner with her, but there were 20 other people there at the time. Go on.
She's been treated extremely badly by her husband, and she's tonight's episode has dropped both the children off with her husband and the mistress, and let the house burn to the ground, and sort of left the children on the doorstep of the husband in his love nest. And she now will be thought to be the scum of the earth for doing this by most people. What I wanted to ask you was, why is it generally accepted that if a man runs off with his mistress and leaves his wife and children, that's fair enough. But if a woman leaves the children with her husband and runs off, she's the lowest of the low.
I don't know that either of those statements, either of those assumptions are correct, although they can be in many cases. there is no reason for it. That is the way our society is structured. We believe, generally, that the bond between a mother and the child is greater than the bond between the father and the child. I would question that, but that is the general belief.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, the father is a parent just as much as a mother, and I don't see why the burden should always be left. Not that children are a burden.
To bring it down to basics, that may be true emotionally, but the father doesn't carry the kid for 9 months. The father, his involvement on the physical side is somewhat less than 9 months, and often less than 5 minutes. So his involvement is not that great. The woman has a physical bond with the child well into its second, third year, if she breastfeeds for that duration, and people do. So the bond is there. The child can live without the father and survive with the mother, but it's very difficult for the child to live without the mother in its early years. Special arrangements have to be made. So there is a stronger natural bond between the mother and the father. The father should be out hunting, if you like.
Well, yeah.
Well, yes, but I mean, we're going back now to when we were apes. In the ape world, from which we're supposed to have arrived, in the ape world, they have dozens of wives. The chief gorilla will have half a dozen wives, and his relationship with his children will be very small, very unimportant. But the relationship between the mother gorilla and the children is very great. And I don't think we're that much different to them. We're just a bit bolder.
It just seems extremely unfair that society has this general consensus.
No, well, I for one won't argue with you that it's unfair. I was explaining it, not justifying it.
Yes.
All right, love.
Yes,
Thanks for your call.
Bye, Alan.
I'll do Peter.
Hello?
Yes?
Can you tell me, could you settle an argument for me, please, Alan?
Depends on the argument.
Could you tell me how Bruce Lee died, please?
I've no idea.
Don't you know?
Who's Bruce Lee?
Bruce Lee, the martial artist?
Oh, no, I don't know.
Could anyone ring up then?
I'm sure if somebody knows, they'll ring.
Can I
Okay?
have an autograph photograph?
Yes, if you send me a stamped, self-addressed envelope. Preston 561,000 if you want to ring up for anything, particularly to tell us how Bruce Lee died. I'll do Jackie. Hello, Jackie.
Hello?
What can we do for you?
I'd just like your opinion, please.
Well, Jackie, I don't give opinions willy-nilly, so if you've got an opinion, let's hear that.
Well, yeah, okay then. I was talking to a couple of my friends the other day, a couple of days ago, and they were on about the Pakistanis. And they said that they're coming over here, they're taking out all the jobs and everything, and I thought it was highly unfair. So I started sticking up for them, because I don't think there's anything wrong with them. And as far as I knew, they came over here willingly. Well, they were told to come over here, in a way, for, like, cheap labour. And I just wanted to know if I were right in saying that.
Initially, that is why the Asian people were here. They were brought here to do the jobs that the English people wouldn't do, the servile tasks. So yes, you're right in that respect. Obviously, the Asians that are arriving now, and people still are arriving, are not here by invitation, because the government's doing everything in its power to keep them out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'll do line 2, Neil.
Alan?
Yes?
A lot of people rang in last night concerning how to kill or get rid of slugs. Am I right?
You are correct.
Well, I've got a perfect solution for it.
Go on.
Get a very large stick. If you cannot find a large stick, snap a branch off a tree. Go up to the slug and tell it to bugger off or you will smash its little scouse brains out. I have found this method.
Well, I'm sorry, Neil, we've got a problem there, you see. There's no such thing as a scouse brain.
Sorry.
Good night.
Good night.
I'll do... Sorry about that. I'll do Pauline.
Hello, Alan.
Hello, Pauline.
I went to bingo the other week.
To where?
Bingo.
Bingo?
Yeah. John Gilmore over there called it numbers out.
Oh, good grief, never mind.
I think you've been telling lies.
Why's that?
He said 2 and 3, his age, 23, 6 and 7, Alan Beswick's age, 6
Did he
and
say
7.
that?
He said 8 and 9, Mike Enfield's age.
6 and 9, John Gilmore's hobby. How do Andrew?
Hello, Alan.
Yes.
Last week you were talking to a chap, and you said to him, the way he was talking, you said, and Glastonbury should be banned soon.
No, I didn't say it should be. I said it probably would be.
Probably would be. Well, I'd like to know why you think it would be banned.
I think it'll be banned. Sound like that man, doesn't it? Bum, 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 bum. I think it'll be banned within the next few years because of the drugs that have been changing hands at Glastonbury, and I think the police will eventually try to get it banned, and if they do try hard enough, I think they'll probably succeed.
Yeah, but don't you think it's such a good idea? I mean, it's such a good earner for CND.
Well, like I say, I didn't want it banned. I'm just saying that I think it will be.
You just think it will be?
Yeah.
Well, I hope it isn't.
Well, I hope it isn't too, but I do hope that people who go to Glastonbury go in the right spirit instead of going there to purchase drugs and traffic drugs and the like, because it won't be the police's prejudices against CND that'll get it banned, otherwise it would have never taken place. What it'll be is their desire not to have the law broken.
Yeah, but I mean, some people are going to break the law no matter what you do.
Well, yes, they are indeed, but one doesn't provide a facility for them so to do.
Well, it's not about them taking drugs, is it?
We're not
That's
really.
only a small part of it.
It is only a small part of it, but if that festival inevitably attracts that kind of person amongst all the others, then there is a chance of cross-infestation, if you like, cross-fertilisation, if you mind. There'll be a lot of that anyway, but if you know what I mean. But people will be encouraged then because they see drugs freely on sale. The argument is that they may well try them, and then the drug problem grows. So the simple answer from the police's point of view will be, and they've not made any noises to this effect yet, as far as I'm aware, but the police's answer will be, well, look, let's ban it, let's get it stopped, because we can't actually control it.
Yeah, I see your point.
Well, it's not my point in actual fact. I'm making the point that that's what it would be eventually. To be honest, I don't think they're heading towards that yet, but it's going to come. Because I can remember Glastonbury 3 years ago when there was no trouble at all. 2 years ago there was some. There was rather more this year. Next year there might be more still. The year after that it might not exist.
It might not.
Okay.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye.
Mr. Smith, Nissan Man, you have accepted the car challenge to sell 300 cars in 150 hours.
No problem. I'll do anything and everything that's legal, decent, honest, and truthful to help the motorist get the car he wants. New Nissans, demonstrators, and used cars. And for every car I sell, 20 pounds goes to the National Children's Home. You want a car? I'll use all my powers to guarantee the best deal.
The car challenge is now on at Mr. Smith, the Nissan Man, Moore Lane, Bolton.
To celebrate the launch of the new Ribble Preston to Fleetwood bus route, Red Rose Radio are pleased to announce free travel all this week up to Saturday the 26th of July, when you can catch the Red Rose Radio bus on this route. In fact, why not take advantage of this offer on the 26th of July and come along to see the Phillips and Red Rose Radio Roadshow taking place at the Marine Gardens Fleetwood between 10:30 and 5. Don't forget, that's free travel on the Red Rose bus on the new Ribble Preston Fleetwood route all this week.
Free travel on the Red Rose bus, whatever next. How do, Gary?
Yes, good evening, Alan.
Good evening.
Yes. May I say one of the rare people that haven't actually been to the pub tonight that you've had on your programme?
I've not been either, and I'm on the programme. What can we do for you?
Alan, may I ask you if your opinion on American football's changed since last year?
No.
As it's one of the fastest growing sports in the country, and as it does a hell of a lot to raise money for charity and what have you, does that not change your opinion, though?
No, what it does to raise charity, fine, most laudable. It's still boring.
It's not, surely. I mean, it's one of the best sports around at the moment. It's certainly
that's all down to opinion, isn't it? And my opinion is that when I've attempted to watch it, it's been boring.
Yeah, but there's a lot more to the game than that's one of the things I like. This is my opinion on the sport. Is that when you actually sit down and watch the game and understand it, there is in fact a lot more to it than what actually meets the eye. There's a lot of actual tactics to it instead of just people just assume it's all brute force and strength, which it is. I mean, obviously there's a lot of physical part of the game, but there is a lot more of actual tactics and actually thinking about
Gary,
it.
if something came on television that bored you rigid, would you say, oh, I must find out more about this? Or would you say, that bores me, is the hotel son? Which would you do?
I think I'd agree with actually saying that bores me rigid.
Right, so if someone says to you, it bores me rigid, you wouldn't bother to find out more?
I don't know. Well, it all depends what subject it is.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, politics.
No, it doesn't.
To be honest with you, politics really bores me rigid. I mean, when we had...
Well, how much do you know about politics?
I appreciate it's a very, very important part of our life, but it actually bores me rigid. But I do try and understand parts of it. Now, I agree that American football...
You're obviously a sucker, but I suppose what you're doing there is thinking, well, I ought to know, I have a responsibility to know, and I can actually understand that argument, although I wouldn't entirely agree with it. But I have no responsibility to understand American football. American football, if it wants my attention and support, has a responsibility to me, and that is it needs to entertain me. And if it fails to do so, then I have no obligation to learn about it so that it will cease to fail.
Yeah.
So I'm still of the opinion that it bores me rigid.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, but it
takes so damn long, doesn't it? I mean, it takes all afternoon for crying out loud.
Yeah, but that is actually part of the game, but...
Well, yes, of course it's part of the game. That's what I'm saying. It takes all flaming afternoon. All them women dancing about waving pom-poms. What in the name of it? I can get by without it.
I don't think we get that many women in England dancing about with pom-poms.
Well, no wonder it bores me rigid. perhaps if you did, I might watch you a bit longer. But none of the game, just the women dancing about waving the pom-poms.
Alan, thank you.
Cheers, mate. It's probably that when it's failing. How do you, Gary?
Hello, Alan.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to talk about this Jeffrey Archer case.
Go on.
Well, I think this man has stitched $500,000 up for himself.
Well, he clearly has, but he didn't do it, did he?
Well, I think he's...
he didn't write the paper.
I know he took the paper to court over what he said about him in the paper. Yes. I think it's quite as any free citizen, he's quite entitled to do that. I'm not getting at him for what he so-called did. I mean, he went for the prostitutes. I think it should be legal anyway.
Well, first of all, it is legal. Secondly, the evidence has been accepted that he didn't go with the prostitute. So to say that he did, you'll end up getting done for $500,000 yourself. But also they'll do me, so don't say it again. But the evidence, the court has decided, a unanimous decision of the jury, by the way, unanimous decision, said, no, he didn't go with that prostitute. Now we have to accept that.
Why didn't he have enough evidence to convict him?
Well, it wasn't a case of conviction. They could not prove their point.
Excuse me, Alan, aren't you allowed to say that you think he's guilty? Aren't you allowed to say yes or no?
I am allowed to give my opinion.
Are you allowed to say yes or no?
I am allowed to say yes or no.
What do you think then?
I think that those who have been in court and heard all the evidence have made a decision that I have not enough information to challenge.
Haven't you really followed the case then, no?
Well, it doesn't matter how well you follow it. You can only follow it in the newspapers, and the newspapers cannot convey it all, and they made no attempt to convey it all.
But it's a bit funny that he said he gave this prostitute £2,000, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit funny that...
Well, no, it isn't funny.
Stranger.
Look, we're still stuck with the answer that the court decided it didn't take place. It's news time, I'm sorry.
Midnight News, this is Alan King. Jeffrey Archer has arrived back at his family home near Cambridge after his courtroom triumph over the Daily Star. The former deputy Tory party chairman arrived at the old vicarage in the village of Grantchester, together with his wife Mary, who was at his side throughout the two-week libel action. Best-selling novelist Mr. Archer says he isn't taking a holiday to celebrate netting £500,000 in damages, but plans to start work on staging his first play. The government is ordering a safety clampdown on ferries following the report into the Zeebrugge disaster, which blames the ship's officers and management for the deaths of nearly 200 people last March. Transport Secretary Paul Channon says it will now be a criminal offence for vessels to leave port with their bow doors open. This was the major cause of the disaster, pinpointed by Inquiry Chairman Mr. Justice Sheen. But he also slammed the ship's captain, chief officer and assistant boatswain for negligence, and the management and operators Townsend Torreson for being sloppy and irresponsible. Former seaman and Labour frontbench spokesman John Prescott says the Herald's crewmen are being made the scapegoats of a whitewash inquiry that's glossed over the guilt of the real culprits.
What worries me most of all is that an agreement was arrived at that the company wouldn't be prosecuted if it cooperated with the inquiry. Why didn't they offer that to the crew members then? No such offer. They're the ones that carry the can. Nothing changes. The people at the top get away with it, and it's the ordinary working man, the seaman and the officer, that carries the can.
An abattoir worker from South Wales has been jailed for kicking an opponent in the face during a violent rugby cup game. Peter Solomons reports. 26-year-old Llanabother fullback Andrew Wilson was jailed for 6 months for deliberately kicking opposing forward Terry Piles in a cup game last November. Piles, who plays for Kimlow, was off work for 8 weeks with a fractured cheekbone. The game had been a catalogue of violence. 2 players had been sent off and the match abandoned after 50 minutes after a number of punch-ups. The judge, Mr. Justice Rougier, said it had been a disgrace to the game of rugby union. He said violence on the rugby field was becoming a disease. Peter Solomons, IRN, South Wales. Actress Joan Collins has won her bitter divorce battle with 4th husband Peter Home and is now vowing, "I'll never, never, never marry again." The Dynasty star leapt into the air as a Los Angeles judge ruled that she wouldn't have to pay Swedish businessman Home any more money. Home, described by Miss Collins' celebrity lawyer Marvin Mitchelson as a greedy, grasping man, will now not be entitled to half of his estranged wife's fortune. From Los Angeles, Ian Brodie.
Joan Collins hugged her lawyer and shouted, "I'm never going to get married again," after hearing that the private agreement she signed with Peter Home is valid. The 40-year-old Swede stood to gain up to £2 million if the decision had gone the other way. Now he will get nothing once the divorce is final. Joan's last comment, "I'm knackered. I'm going to sit by the pool." Ian Brodie, IRN, Los Angeles.
Independent Radio News.
Who cares whether Joan Collins gets married or not? Nobody. Nobody in the world. Not even John Collins, probably.
Ring him if you dare.
Allan Beswick, the Late Night Show.
And if you wish to join us, the telephone number is Preston 56 1000. Right now it's 3.5 minutes past midnight. Welcome to Saturday. How do, Chris?
Hello, Alan. I'd like to talk about the police force, if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm becoming increasingly anxious by the new aggressive face of British policing in the 80s, especially the London forces, and the increasing evidence that the old traditions are sort of being turned on their heads, and that we're beginning a new, disturbing era of law enforcement in this country.
Well, that's all very nice and all that, but give us your evidence.
Well, I mean, since the war, British police has been governed by those fundamental doctrines, hasn't it? That have been the main base of its success and set us apart from the nations.
Tell us what your evidence is.
For what?
For this deteriorating attitude in the police force, or this increasingly violent police force.
I'm not saying it's increasingly violent. I'm just saying it's changing for the worse.
Well, tell me in what way?
Well, the police is a force.
We know what it is. Tell me what it's doing that you disapprove of.
Well, it should be a force.
Tell me what it's doing that you disapprove of.
It's becoming a force of action rather than a force of reaction.
Explain yourself.
Well, the police, right, they're usually, always, they never take the initiative, do they? They should always use the minimum force. They should always be well, not passive, but just maybe one step behind.
Let's stop you a second, because you're having difficulty. Give me an instance where something has happened.
Oh, grief.
Well, tell me what happened.
Well, that was a situation where there was a large crowd, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the situation was not, well, it was tense, but not particularly violent. But the police, they did not use the minimum force. They became a force of action, brought the riot shields forward, brought the horses forward, and thus brought about a riot.
They did, of course, ask the people to disperse, my apologies.
Disperse?
And they didn't do so.
Yeah.
What are they meant to do?
Excuse to bring them...
Well, what are they meant to do? The police want them to disperse. The local residents want them to disperse. The
local residents around
the mine wants them to disperse. The mine workers who were working want them to disperse. What are the police meant to do? Say, well, there's a lot of them, you know. They won't go. We've asked them very nicely.
Yeah.
So what do they do?
Well, they don't go charging you with horses.
I ask you, don't tell me what they don't do, because by that you eliminate what they did do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to establish what alternatives there were available to them.
Well, they could use the conventional crowd control methods.
Name one.
Well, gentle dispersal.
Well, name it. How?
The linking of arms and idly moving the crowd forward, like they do at football matches, like they do at demonstrations in the local parks, things like that.
A lot of policemen would be carried away on stretchers if they did that.
Would they?
Yes.
Was it a particularly violent crowd before the riot chiefs came forward?
I think it was inevitably going...
afraid it wasn't. It only became violent
Excuse me.
when the right issue came forward.
Excuse me. If you listen, you'll find the full sentence contained the word inevitably. I think it would have been inevitable that violence would have ensued against the police.
Nothing is ever inevitable.
I think it was a perfectly sensible
It was a
decision.
possibility, a distinct possibility, I agree.
Certainly possible, a certain possibility, and therefore, on the balance of probabilities, would have happened. So the police, on the balance of probabilities, the police believed it would have happened.
Police believed it would have happened, precisely.
So
and I accept that judgment, and I think they were right in trying to disperse that crowd. I just think their methods were wrong.
But what methods were left available to them, given that listen carefully, given that they decided that had they used the one that you've just outlined, or any of the other peaceful ones that are available to them, and there aren't that many, had they, well, name another one then.
The use of dogs.
Dogs?
Yes. Police and dogs.
And what would they do?
Well, it would be it would be a way of moving the crowd on. People are frightened by the dogs, but it's a step further back. It's not half as violent as people charging you in horses, is it?
You've obviously never been savaged by a dog. However,
you haven't
no one is
by a horse either.
I have actually. Both. And of the two.
There's quite a difference between
two,
a policeman with a dog and a policeman on a horse with a baton.
Of the two, I actually think I would prefer the policeman on the horse, but that's a personal choice.
Trunching at your head.
I'm sorry?
Swinging his truncheon at your head.
Yeah, you've got a chance of getting away from that. The dog's rather more determined. However,
it's on a lead.
That takes it. Yes, of course it is.
All police dogs are on leads.
All police dogs ought to be on leads. They don't always stay that way because they can't, and police dogs on leads have done some very nasty things to some people on more than one occasion. We are making no progress other than you say they had other options available to them. And yes, that may have been the case.
Well, shall we say
that may have been the case. However, they have to make decisions on the day on the ground.
Yeah, that's right.
And the decision on the day was that the only realistic way of dispersing this crowd is thus, and that they implement that.
But it was wrong, unfortunately.
That's a matter of opinion as to whether it was wrong.
Yes. Well, just say that's just an example we've had today anyway. I mean, it's obviously open to discussion. But
well, we are discussing it. We are discussing it.
Yeah, it's also apparent for other instances as well. I mean, I don't know if you remember it or not, when the Home Secretary visited Manchester a couple of years ago.
Yes.
How was a disturbance? It was at the Manchester University.
Yes, indeed there
was.
was.
Disturbance outside before that. Well, that was another instance of police action rather than simply reaction.
Well, once again, what were they reacting to? You say they weren't reacting to anything, but they were. No, I do understand. Well, you're saying it was action, not reaction.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm saying, no, it wasn't action, not reaction. It may well have been action you disapprove of, but it was in reaction to the status quo, and the status quo was there.
What were they responding to? Just
the status quo. Yes.
A peaceful demonstration.
Not a peaceful demonstration, an obstruction of the doorway to prohibit the Home Secretary from passing into the building.
But did you actually know what the police did to move that crowd?
Well, what I'm trying to establish, first of all, is that the police reacted to a status quo. They reacted to a situation. The statement that they did not react implies that they were there first and went and rounded up a few students to give them a good idea. That is not what happened. They did react to the situation. Now, you might say they abreacted, you might also say they overreacted, but they did react. Seconds ago, you said they didn't. You said they excuse me, they implemented action rather than reaction.
That's right.
Well, now you're saying they did react.
No, what I'm saying is...
What are you saying? Because we're having difficulty now.
I'll try to tell you now. When I say I mean action, I mean that they take the initiative over the course of events. Usually...
What do you mean they take the initiative? They did not implement the demonstration.
They didn't implement the demonstration.
They did not implement the public statement that the Home Secretary would not be allowed to enter the building.
They implemented the violence which led...
Well, it's a matter of opinion whether they implemented the violence, but they well. Just a second. The police force is not a passive organisation.
No, it's a reactionary force.
It is more than a reactionary force, but in crowd control, it is inevitably a reactionary force. It has to be reactionary.
That's right.
It can only react to the stimulus.
Yeah.
Now, the stimulus on that occasion was that the students were demonstrating, you say peaceably, but they had made it clear that the Home Secretary was not going to be allowed to give his lecture.
Yeah.
That is a right that the police have an obligation to defend. Your right, my right, and even the Home Secretary's right. They had a clear statement that they would not be allowed to give his speech, so they made a way through.
Okay, so right, but that was completely overreacting.
Well, what did they say? Now, come on, pretty please, we all want you to go, and everybody would have gone home. Of course they would. Everybody knows the students would have said, "That's all right, officer, thank you. Bye-bye now. We've had our say." That is not what they would have done. That is not what they would have done, is it, Chris? That is not what they would have done, is it, Chris?
Probably not, no.
No,
but
so,
as I say, there are
so what
more...
the police said was, you may move or you may stay, but the Home Secretary's coming through. Make your decision and get off the steps.
Yeah, but
I think that's perfectly honourable.
It's perfectly honourable, but it's...
Good, I'm glad you agree. How do, Phil?
Hello there.
Hello there.
Sorry about this. I've been listening intently to your last words about the Salford thing, but I've got a head jog. Hello?
You just heard what you said.
You did. I've got a head jog in my garage. He doesn't want to move.
Well, fine.
But I don't want to shut him in.
Well, don't, man.
Well, I've no option. I've got to shut the doors and I've got to go home.
Well, roll him out.
The little rascal's under a ramp
Well, leave him in.
for the night.
For the night.
Right. Anyway, getting away from my jog.
Well, you've had your subject. You only get the one. How do, Andrew?
Hello, Alan. I'd just like to disagree with, was it Catherine earlier on? She says that she wants to get rid of the armed forces. If she got rid of the armed forces, I'd lose my job, and I don't want that.
And that's your only reason for supporting the armed forces?
Well, not really, Alan, no.
Well, what's other reasons?
Well, to protect the country, for one thing.
What against?
Enemies?
What enemies?
Prospective enemies.
Well, they don't protect them against prospective enemies.
Defend the country from, well, like the Argentinians.
Well, they didn't do, did they?
Well, we fought them off.
Well, we didn't defend. Didn't deter anything.
We got rid of them eventually.
Got rid of them eventually, yes, but if the politicians had not had the army to rely upon, they'd have had to sort it out well before. Sometime in the last 100 years when they've neglected those islands. You see, the existence of the armed forces on 24-hour standby means that the politicians always have them at their disposal. It's rather like the argument that if you carry a knife at night and you're attacked, you'll probably end up stabbing somebody, because it's there, and so you'll use it. So you have to say, well, the only way that we can stop this person from stabbing people, for certain, is to take away his knife. Now, the only way you can stop the politicians going to war is to take away the weapons of war and leave them with their politics and let them sort it out.
No, but you can't use just politics, can you?
Why not?
You can't.
Why not?
Well, we haven't got a large armed forces anyway, so she can't do that much damage.
No, listen, you've already told us how much damage she can do. You've already told us how successful they were at doing damage in the Falklands. So, if those forces were not available when the Argentinians wanted to negotiate about sovereignty of the Falklands, they would have had to discuss it and try to find an answer, because there were no young men to send to their deaths. But because there were young men prepared to die for their politicians' mistakes, the politicians didn't feel any obligation to get it right, and still don't.
Yeah, but those young men went to volunteer. They volunteered to go down
That doesn't make it right. If somebody says to me, I will lay down my life for you, and I say, OK, get on with it, that doesn't make me right, and it doesn't make them right. It might make them honourable, but it doesn't make them right.
Yeah.
Thatcher let those men die. She sent them to their deaths. She says she did it to save the country. She could have saved the country 20 years before, 10 years before, 5 years before. But she failed. Not just her, but her ilk. Previous governments failed. They failed to solve the Falklands crisis. So it developed into a war. And if there had been no soldiers to defend, if there had been no soldiers to fight the battles for them, they'd have had to do it themselves. And if they'd have had to do it themselves, I promise you, not one drop of blood would have been spilt. Because politicians don't go to war, they send people to war. They've had their lives, they're all wrinkly and dying. It's true. You can snigger, but it's true. They don't go to war. They say, send 5,000 men. They're all dead. Oh, we'll send another 5,000. We've loads of them. They're only a couple of quid each. Doesn't matter. They're not us. They're only kids. They're disposable. We've plenty left. And they're volunteers anyway. They like dying. They love it. That's the attitude of the politician. Whereas if they didn't have those soldiers, they'd have to say, hang on, Galtieri, let's have a chat about this, will you? You appear to have nothing else to say.
That's right, I'm okay.
Good night. How do, Dave?
Alan,
Yes?
I'd like to talk about illegal taping.
Then do so.
Well, I think if the records were cheaper, the people wouldn't have to tape off the radio or off other people's records.
I think if they were a penny each, people wouldn't buy them still. Some people would still want to steal them.
Well, I don't mean stealing, I mean taping off other people.
That's stealing the copyright.
Well, that's one way of putting it, yeah, but...
No, that's not one way of putting it. That's what it is. You're stealing use of the copyright. People would still tape, no matter what price the records.
Yeah, but a lot more people would buy if they were cheaper.
No, they wouldn't. They're free in the library. You can get most LPs in the library for free. Well, for about £6 a year. You can't get much cheaper than that, but people still go along. They actually get them out the library and then tape them.
Well, I've never done that myself.
No, well, I've just given you a good idea. All right. Cheers. Ta. How do, Jason?
I'd just like to reply to the early caller's play on how Bruce Lee died.
Go on.
Right, he actually died in 1973 of a brain disease. He took a headache tablet, which one of the compounds in it he was allergic to. And that caused the fluids around his brain to swell. So it therefore killed him.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Okay.
Paul Bruce Lee. How do, Anthony?
Hello, Alan.
Yes?
I'd like to talk about addiction to fruit machines.
Go on.
Well, the other night there was a lad on, and he was saying, you know, that easy to get addicted to them. Many people do, like. I'd like you to consider this, Alan, right? What would you say if I said that people play fruit machines solely to lose? What would be your reaction to that?
I've no idea. I'm sure some people don't play to lose.
Well, it's been stated by psychiatrists that if you think about it, Alan, if you go and play a fruit machine, which I'm sure you may have done, if you did win £4, £10, the reaction that you'd have yourself isn't so great. You don't feel much emotion. But
well, you may well not. I dance around the room if I ever win it.
Okay, Alan. Well, you look around an arcade, you don't see people dancing around, do you?
Well, yes, but they're rather different. I'm not in an arcade very often. In fact, I think I've only ever been in one twice. But when I'm talking about the ones in high streets now. I've been in the ones in Blackpool quite a lot when I've been on day trips and the like as a youngster. But when I win, I'm pleased, and I generally stop as well.
Yeah, well, many young people today don't feel that way. If, on the other hand, they lose £7 or £8, the emotion that they feel, the way they feel is very strong, don't they? They feel, sort of hurt and all that, let down. And they feel, they have a great feeling inside. I don't mean a very good feeling, but they feel very strongly inside them. Well, people strive to feel emotion, don't they, Alan? You know, it's a big part of life, feeling emotion.
Obviously, people do strive to feel emotion, but people don't generally strive to feel bad emotion.
But, Alan, emotion is emotion.
Well, no, it isn't. I would far sooner have a pleasant experience than chop my arm off.
Obviously.
Honestly.
But
I promise you that.
All emotions are very close together. Have you ever heard it said that?
Well, yes, of course the emotions are close together, but that wasn't... I'm sorry, Jason. Anthony, my apologies. There's one emotion of yours. You were disappointed. However, you said that emotions are the same. Emotion's emotion. Well, I disagree with you. They are close together. Love and hate. There's a very fine line between love and hate. But there is a line between love and hate, no matter how fine it is. And of the two, I would prefer to experience love than hate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of the three, if you include indifference, then I'd rather have love or hate than indifference.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So yes, emotion is emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But within those emotions, there are ranges. There are a rainbow of range, if you like. And I'd prefer to feel love than hate.
But it has been proven by psychiatrists that people, when they lose a lot of money, will go back and play.
I'm sorry. That statement is too vague. It hasn't been proven by a psychiatrist that if people lose a lot of money, they'll go back. it's been proven by psychiatrists that some people, generally those who end up as addicts, will go back when they lose a lot of money. But addicts are not ordinary people. They are inadequate people in some way. They have a malfunction in their personality. And that is what the malfunction is. They cannot distinguish between the value of a good emotion and a bad emotion. They just want an emotion. And if it happens to be a bad one, well, fine, all well and good, we'll have it.
Yeah.
So they're disorientated, if you like. They're not quite all together with us.
Okay. Well, I've put anything else to say, Alan. I just wanted to point out that point.
Well, there's the point. Thank you for it.
Anyway.
Ta-ra now.
Hello.
How do? Nobody, because we won't have one of these.
Please listen to my ditty. It may not be very witty, nor even slightly funny, but it will help save you money. For me, from cradle to grave, I aim to shop and save. I buy out I need, for next to nought indeed. There's meat and veg and cheese and pigs and booze and clothes and cards and sweets and pigs and pet food and household things. So shop and save a load down Blackpool's Waterloo Road, in the market they call New, and Overt Road, the M2. Thank you. Poetry in prices, from the New Market and M2 Market.
It's the place to come, where shopping can be fun. The Newmarket Waterloo Road.
A street, a sound is the start of the day. It's the heat of the road, it's breaking away. A kiss, a glance, it is hot, it is cool. A smile, a chance, it is breaking a rule. It's just how you feel when you know it's for real. It's a hit, it's a Coca-Cola, is it?
Ian Stringer here, sales manager John Wilding's Garstang, inviting you to our Ford Open Weekend this Saturday and Sunday. We'll be displaying the Ford range, including limited model editions with styling and extras. Enjoy a glass of wine with our compliments and enter our free competition. Pick up written details on low finance selected models too. This weekend, John Wilding's on the A6 Garstang.
When you think about cars, it pays to think of John Wilding. John Wilding!
How do, Andrew?
How do, Alan?
Too young. How do, Joyce? Hello, Joyce? Goodbye, Joyce. How do, Paul? Hello, Paul. Having problems here.
Hello.
Hello, Joyce, we've got you.
Yeah.
What can we do for you?
I was wondering why you're leaving us to go to Manchester.
No real reason. It's just I've been offered a programme I want to do, so I'm doing it. How do, Paul?
Hi, Alan. I'd like to talk about the Jeffrey Arch libel case, please.
Go on.
Well, I believe that the judge summed up and therefore influenced the jury's decision.
There is a suggestion of that, and that is why there's an appeal going to go in.
Why he did it at all, Alan. I think
Well, he may well have not done it, first of all, but if he did do it, because we're only talking about independent and lawyers and journalists' interpretation of the judge's summing up, but if he did do it, he may well have done it on purpose in order to ensure that there was an appeal. He may well want it to go to the appeal court. He may well feel that that court is not really high enough to make the decision. He wants the appeal court to look at it.
Well, I don't think judges should sum up at all, Alan.
Well, they have to sum up because they have to remind the jury of the law in the case. The judge's job is to explain the law to the jury in terms of what the law says about a certain thing, what a particular crime is. He also has to sum up what the evidence is that has been put. The jury has to believe who they wish to believe, but the judge has to be certain that they heard all the evidence and that all the evidence is in their mind.
Yeah, but the judge went through the consequences, though.
That is part of his role.
Oh, but that's wrong, surely.
No, it's not wrong, although the Court of Appeal may well decide that he overstepped the line. It's a very ill-drawn line, a poorly drawn line between what a judge can say and what he can't say. And if it is seen that he directed the jury towards a particular verdict, then the Court of Appeal may well overturn the verdict. There again, it may well say that the evidence was such that the judge had no alternative.
Yeah, but the consequences shouldn't come into it, should they, Alan?
The consequences should come into it. They are quite important.
He didn't.
Well, indeed,
That's the issue.
Indeed, it is an issue as to whether he did it or didn't do it. But they also have to take into consideration what is going to happen. The judge is free to say whatever he likes. That is why we have a backstop. That is why we have another court, and that is the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal, if it goes to appeal, because there's only notice been given at the moment, the Court of Appeal will decide whether the judge has overstepped the mark. It may well be that he has done. It may well be that he did so on purpose in order to ensure a Court of Appeal.
Right.
Okay. Cheers. How do Peter?
Hello, Alan?
Yes?
I'd like to talk about the government.
Go on.
Well, I reckon that this government is too much in favour of like big businesses. These big businesses like screw the people.
Give me your evidence.
Well, there's take for example a company, a multinational like BP, and BP has got a lot of buying power because it's like very rich, like. And what it does is because it's so powerful. There's take for example the hydrogen turbine engine for the family motor car.
I don't think we need to go into all the details. Just tell me what evidence you've got that this government is in favour of big business.
Well, in its general capitalist attitudes, like.
Well, never mind general capitalist attitudes like. Tell me what you mean.
What's wrong with saying like?
Nothing wrong with saying like, it just will get you cut off the programme. Nothing wrong with it at all, it just irritates me and I run the programme how I feel like. So, what I suggest you do is not say that again, or like again, and just tell me your evidence for assuming, or indeed believing, that the government is in favour of big business, like.
I don't really see why you've got to make such a bigoted value judgment on a perfectly valid dialectal form of communication.
I don't give a stuff whether you do or not. Are you going to put your point, or are you going to be cut off? I don't mind which.
Well, I will. It's just.
Well, do it now. You have your last chance to get to your point.
Well, the government helps perpetuate big business. It encourages big business and investment.
Tell me how.
How do you mean exactly how?
Well, exactly that. You're saying it encourages it. Give me an excuse. Give me a reason. Give me an example.
In perpetuating capitalist society. It is in
favour of the capitalist society.
It allows private ownership of the forces of production.
And what is wrong with that?
Well, what's wrong with that is that means that the people who are rich, the people who have the power, and they can afford to screw the proletariat.
No, can we just do away with they can afford to screw? They can also afford not to screw.
But they do, though.
Well, we're not interested in whether they can afford. If you're telling me they do, fine, that is your belief. You are entitled to it. What I'm asking you to do is to give me some evidence where the government has created a situation where the big business can screw the proletariat.
It simply allows. Well, let's take for example the selling off of shares.
Let me ask you a question. Name me one country that does not use a capitalist system that actually works.